Welcome to HFY Codex. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for thrilling HFY adventures. Join us and be part of the journey. The Smile in the Dark. The night was quiet, but it was not the kind of quiet that felt safe. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your ears, making you feel like the darkness was listening. Daniel moved slowly across the broken battlefield, his boots sinking into the soft ash and dirt. The air smelled of burnt metal and something else, something alive, watching him from far away. Above, the moon was cracked, its pieces drifting like pale ghosts in the black sky. He held a small flashlight, the beam shaking slightly in his hand. Everywhere he looked, there were twisted remains of alien machines, shattered weapons, and the strange bones of creatures he could not name. Daniel was a scavenger, nothing more. He came here looking for scrap, maybe food packs left behind after the war. But tonight, the place felt different. He felt as if the war had not ended here at all, as if the battlefield was still breathing. Soft crunch sounded to his left. Daniel froze. His flashlight swung in that direction, cutting through the mist. Nothing, only shadows and broken shapes. He let out a slow breath. Then he heard a voice, a woman's voice, calm and smooth, almost smiling. "Human," she said, her tone gentle but heavy with meaning. "One word, and my monster will tear you apart." Daniel turned, his heart racing. She was standing a few meters away between two shattered alien vehicles. The mist curled around her like a living thing. She was tall, her skin pale with a faint shimmer. Under the moonlight, her eyes bright and strange, she wore dark armor that looked damaged but still deadly. And yes, she was smiling. Not a warm smile, but the kind you gave when you already knew the ending to a story. Daniel did not move. His mind raced. Monster! What monster? There was nothing around her. But then he heard it. A deep, slow growl, rolling through the air like distant thunder. The sound came from somewhere behind her, hidden in the mist. It was the kind of growl that told you the thing making it was big, heavy, and hungry. "Stay very still," she said softly, tilting her head like she was studying him. "It likes to play before it eats." Daniel swallowed hard. His flashlight beam trembled as he tried to see into the shadows behind her. Something moved. Something large. For a split second, he thought he saw a shape, but it was blurry, half hidden, like it was bending the air around it. Then it was gone, melting back into the mist. Why haven't you called it yet?" Daniel asked, his voice unsteady. She smiled wider. "Because I'm curious." Her eyes locked on his, as if she was trying to read something inside him. "You're not like the others who come here," she continued. "They run, they beg, they die. But you stand and ask questions." Daniel took a careful step back. The growl came again, this time from a different angle. It was moving, circling him. He felt the ground vibrate under his feet, soft at first, then stronger. Heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Her smile did not fade. "That depends on what you are willing to give," she said. "Maybe I let you live, maybe I don't." The air grew colder. Daniel's breath came out in white clouds. He kept his eyes on her, but in his peripheral vision, he saw shapes flicker in the mist, too tall to be human, too fast to be any animal he knew. His grip tightened on his flashlight, though he knew it was useless. Whatever her monster was, it was far beyond anything he had ever faced. She took a step closer, her boots silent on the ash. "Do you believe me, human?" she asked, her voice almost teasing. "That I could end you with a single word?" Daniel's throat was dry, but he nodded slowly. "I believe you," he said. Her smile deepened, and for a moment, Her expression softened, almost like she was amused. "Good," she whispered, "because I don't like wasting words." Then, without warning, the growl turned into a low, rumbling snarl, and something massive shifted in the mist right beside him. Daniel's blood went cold. He dared not move. The alien woman's eyes followed the invisible shape, her hand twitching like she was holding an invisible leash. The ground shook again, and the mist around him began to swirl as if a storm was forming. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but his body wouldn't obey. The air was thick with the scent of wet fur and something metallic, like blood, somewhere close. Something breathed in, slow and deep, as if tasting his fear. The woman tilted her head again, still smiling. "Tell me, human," she said softly, "how fast do you think you can run?" Before Daniel could answer, the heavy footsteps came closer, too close. The mist shifted, and he saw it. Just for a second, a pair of glowing eyes, low to the ground, burning like molten gold. And then, the darkness swallowed them whole again. The alien woman's smile never faded. "One word," she said again, her voice like silk over steel. "One word, and you will never see the dawn." The ground shook harder, and Daniel realized the thing was about to pounce. He tightened his grip on the flashlight, his mind racing for a plan. But before he could move, the night erupted with a sound. Another growl, deeper, louder, coming from far off in the mist, a sound that made the woman's smile falter just for a heartbeat, and then everything went still. The invisible hunter. The battlefield was still, but Daniel could feel the danger closing in. The alien woman's smile had returned, softer now, but no less dangerous. Somewhere in the mist, the growl faded into silence. It was the kind of silence that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, the kind that told him the predator was no longer announcing itself. It was hunting. He tried to keep his breathing steady. The woman's bright, strange eyes stayed fixed on him, watching every twitch of his muscles. "You moved your foot," she said quietly. "It heard that." Her words sent a shiver down his spine. Daniel kept his body still, but his mind was racing. He could almost feel the weight of something large circling him in the fog, unseen. "What is it?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Her smile curved into something almost playful. "It is mine," she said, "and it is older than your planet." Daniel swallowed. "Why can't I see it?" he asked. "Because it doesn't want you to," she replied, tilting her head. "And it doesn't want you to... yet." A sudden sound broke the quiet, a metallic creak as if something heavy had stepped onto a broken piece of armor nearby. Daniel's flashlight swung instinctively toward it, but the beam only caught empty mist. The woman sighed. "You humans always look," she said. "You think your eyes will save you." She took a slow step closer to him, her dark armor brushing against his shoulder. Daniel could smell something, faint on her, like cold stone and a strange, sweet spice. "You are brave," she continued, "but bravery is not always wise." The air shifted. Daniel's skin prickled as if an invisible wind had moved past him. In the corner of his vision, he saw something bend, just a shimmer in the fog, like heat over sand. It was gone in an instant, but he knew it had been close enough to touch him. The woman's gaze flicked toward the shimmer. She didn't speak, but her hand twitched slightly, like she was giving a silent signal. The ground made a faint vibration, one heavy step, then another, circling back. Daniel's mind screamed at him to move, to run into the wreckage, find cover, escape. But he knew, deep inside, that running would only make it faster. The woman's voice cut through his thoughts. "Do you know why I haven't said the word yet?" she asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. Her smile was faint now, her eyes calculating. Because I am not sure if you are worth killing, she said softly. Or saving. The words hit him like a cold blade. He didn't know what game she was playing, but it was clear she had the control. The growl returned, low, rumbling, moving from one side to the other. Daniel realized it was trying to confuse him, to make him turn the wrong way. He gripped his flashlight tighter, though. It felt as useless as a stick in a storm. Can you call it off? He asked. Yes, she said simply. But I won't. Her smile widened again. Not until I know what you are. A sudden rush of air brushed past Daniel's back. He spun instinctively, and his beam caught something, a flash of gold. Like an eye, just before it vanished again, his pulse pounded in his ears. It's right there, he hissed. She tilted her head, still smiling. It's everywhere, she whispered. Daniel turned in a slow circle, scanning the mist. The silence felt alive. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Every piece of wreckage seemed ready to move. The woman spoke again, her voice softer, almost like a lullaby. You should not fear it, she said. It only kills quickly if I tell it to. Her smile lingered for a heartbeat, then faded. But if it plays with you first, you'll wish it didn't. The air grew colder. Daniel's breath hung in front of him like thin smoke. He could hear something now, not footsteps, but the sound of claws scraping gently against metal. It was a slow, deliberate sound, the way a cat might sharpen its claws before striking. Then, without warning, the sound stopped. Everything went silent. Daniel held his breath. He turned toward the woman, but she was no longer looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on the fog to his right. Her smile was gone now, replaced with something he hadn't seen before in her eyes. A flicker of concern. That was when he heard it. A second growl. This one. Deeper, louder, and coming from the opposite side, it wasn't the same creature. Daniel could feel the difference in the sound. It was heavier, hungrier, and closer. The woman's head turned slowly, her lips pressing into a thin line. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That is not mine. Daniel's stomach tightened. The first growl returned, this time directly behind him. The two sounds overlapped, low and rumbling, vibrating through the ground. He realized there were now two predators in the mist, one bound to her, and one wild. The woman stepped closer to him, her voice cold and sharp. Don't move, she said. If you move, you die. Daniel stood frozen. The air between the two growls seemed to thicken. Somewhere in the mist, something massive shifted, and then both sounds began to move toward him at the same time. The game of words. Daniel stood frozen, caught between two growls that seemed to shake the very air around him. The alien woman's eyes flicked from one side to the other, measuring the danger. Her lips curved into that same unsettling smile, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. It seems, she said softly, that my monster is not the only one interested in you. Daniel tried to speak, but his throat felt too tight. The two growls moved in a slow, circling pattern, the mist shifting with their movements. It was like being trapped between two storms, each waiting for the other to strike. The woman took a slow step forward, standing so close that Daniel could see the faint silver lines on her pale skin, like scars from something sharp. You want to live, human? She asked quietly. Daniel gave the smallest nod. Then listen, she said. In this game, words are the only weapon. Daniel frowned, not understanding. What do you mean? Shh, she cut him off, her finger rising to her lips. Don't waste them, she whispered. Every word you speak changes the way they see you. She began to circle him slowly, her eyes locked on his, as though they were the only two people in the world. The growls faded into the background, not gone, but waiting. Tell me, she said softly. "What is your name?" Daniel hesitated, unsure if it was safe to answer. When he didn't reply, she tilted her head. "Not answering can be an answer too," she murmured, her voice almost amused. "But sometimes silence invites teeth." Her eyes glimmered in the dim light, and she took another step closer. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Scavenging," Daniel said cautiously. She smiled faintly. "So you are a thief." "Not a thief," he said quickly. "Just trying to survive." Her gaze softened, but only slightly. "Survival," she said. "That is the word every killer uses." Daniel's heartbeat was loud in his ears. He noticed something. Whenever she spoke, the growls seemed to pause, as if the creatures were listening too. "Why do they listen to you?" he asked. Her smile returned. "Because words bind them," she said, "just as they bind you." Daniel felt a strange chill at her words. "You control them with language?" he asked. She laughed softly, the sound low and dangerous. "Not language," she corrected. "Intent." Her eyes bored into his. "One word can make them love you. Another can make them tear you apart." The mist shifted again, and Daniel caught a faint shimmer moving on his left. Her monster, watching, waiting. On his right, he could hear the slow, heavy breathing of the wild one. He realized they were both reacting to the conversation. The woman leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you say the wrong thing now, human, I won't stop them." Daniel swallowed hard. "Then what do you want me to say?" Her smile widened, as though he had finally stepped onto the game board. "I want to see if your words can buy your life," she said. "Speak, and we will see who listens." Daniel took a deep breath, his mind racing. If she was telling the truth, then every word mattered. But what could he possibly say to two unseen predators? "I'm not your enemy," he said slowly. The growl on the left softened slightly, but the one on the right deepened. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Interesting," she murmured. "One believes you, the other does not." "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because truth is not the same for all who hear it," she said. Her gaze shifted to the mist. "Try again," Daniel thought fast. "I can help you," he said firmly. Both growls changed, becoming sharper, more alert. The woman chuckled. "Now they think you are a threat," she said. "You offer help and they hear it as a challenge." Daniel's frustration grew. "This is impossible," he muttered. Her smile sharpened. "Only if you believe it is," she said. "Every living thing speaks its own language. Find it and you can survive." Before Daniel could reply, the ground shuddered under a heavy step from the right. The mist split for just a moment, revealing a massive clawed leg before it vanished again. The woman's voice cut through the tension. "One last chance, human," she said softly. "One sentence to decide whether you leave here breathing." Daniel's pulse pounded. He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of what she had said. Words, intent, understanding. When he opened them, he looked directly at her. "I will protect what you protect," he said clearly. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the growl on the left softened, almost like a purr. The one on the right paused, then began to retreat, footsteps fading into the mist. The woman's smile returned, but this time there was something new in it, respect. "Well played," she said quietly. "But the game," she added, stepping closer, "is not over." And somewhere in the distance, the wild growl answered as if promising to return. The rival beast. The mist settled for only a moment. Daniel's chest rose and fell slowly, relief creeping into his bones, but the alien woman didn't relax. Her smile stayed, but her eyes searched the fog like a hunter sensing another predator. That one will not give up, she said softly. It has a master. Daniel froze. A master? You mean it's trained? Her gaze snapped back to him, sharp and unreadable. Not trained, she said. Bound, like mine. The idea sent a cold shiver down Daniel's spine. If there was another creature like hers, and it belonged to someone else, that someone had to be close. The mist shifted again, the faint sound of metal clicking echoing in the air. It was a slow, steady sound, like boots walking across armor plates. From the shadows, a figure emerged. At first, Daniel thought it was another alien, but as the shape grew clearer, his stomach twisted. It was a human, a tall man in worn, battle-stained armor, his helmet hanging at his side, revealing a scarred face and eyes as cold as the void. The man smirked at Daniel before his gaze slid toward the woman. "Lyris," he said, his voice low and mocking. "I see you still keep that pet of yours on a leash." The woman, Lyris, didn't move. Her voice was calm but edged with steel. "And I see you're still foolish enough to walk into my hunting ground, Cor." Daniel's pulse quickened. These two knew each other, and not as friends, Cor. Tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with a cruel sort of amusement. "I came for the bond," he said simply. "Give me your monster, and maybe I'll let your new little scavenger live." Daniel's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about survival anymore. He was a bargaining chip. Lyris's smile widened, but it was the coldest one yet. "You forget, Cor," she said. "My bond doesn't obey thieves." Behind Cor, the mist swirled violently. Something massive stepped forward, and Daniel saw it. Just for a second. The rival beast was larger than Lyris's, its hide shimmering with faint shifting colors. Its eyes burned red like molten stone, and its mouth curved into something almost like a grin. It moved like liquid shadow, muscles rolling under skin that seemed to vanish and reappear. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run. But Lyris didn't move. Her voice was smooth and taunting. "Your beast looks hungry," she said. Cor grinned. "It hasn't eaten in days." The two monsters began to circle each other in the mist, their movements slow but full of lethal promise. The air crackled with tension. Daniel felt like he was standing between two storms ready to explode. He looked at Lyris. "What do you want me to do?" he whispered. She didn't look at him. "Stay alive," she said simply, "and don't get in the way." The rival beast lunged first, a blur of muscle and claws. Lyris's monster met it with an ear-splitting roar, their clash sending shock waves. Through the ground, metal wreckage split under their weight as they slammed into each other. The mist churned violently, hiding most of the fight. But Daniel could hear it. The sound of teeth on armor, claws tearing through steel, the deep snarls of two predators locked in a death struggle. Cor didn't watch the fight. He watched Lyris. "You're getting slower," he said with a smirk. "One day you'll slip and I'll take everything you have." Lyris's eyes narrowed. "Not today," she said coldly. Daniel noticed something. Cor wasn't holding any weapons, but his right hand twitched slightly every few seconds. It was a signal. The rival beast responded to those movements, adjusting its attacks. Cor was controlling it just like Lyris. Controlled hers, Daniel's mind raced. If Cor could command his beast with gestures, maybe he could distract him, maybe even turn the fight. But that meant drawing Cor's attention, and that could get him killed. Before Daniel could act, Lyris's voice cut through the chaos. "Daniel," she said sharply without looking at him. "Choose." He blinked, confused. "Choose what?" Her eyes flicked toward him for just a heartbeat. "Whose side you're on," she said. "And choose fast." The beasts crashed together again, the impact shaking the ground. Cor's smirk widened as he took a slow step toward Daniel. "You don't owe her anything, scavenger," he said in a low, tempting voice. "Come with me and I'll make sure you live." Daniel's heart pounded. Both predators were locked in combat, but he knew their masters could end this at any moment. He looked from Kor's scarred, calculating face to Lyris's sharp, unreadable smile. One felt like danger he could predict. The other, danger wrapped in mystery. Daniel began, but his words were cut off by a scream of metal as one of the beasts slammed the other to the ground. The mist split just long enough for him to see Lyris's monster's claws buried deep in the rival's chest. Blood, black and steaming, splattered across the wreckage. Kor's eyes narrowed. His hand twitched sharply, and the rival beast surged back to its feet with a roar. The fight wasn't over. It was only getting bloodier, and Daniel realized, no matter which side he chose, the other would want him dead. The bond of survival. Daniel's chest tightened, the roars of the two beasts shaking the wreckage around him. The mist swirled in violent circles, claws scraping metal, teeth clashing with a sound like shattering bone. Lyris's monster and the rival beast moved, too fast to track, shadows tearing into each other in bursts of silver and red light. But Daniel's focus was locked on the two humans who controlled them. Kor stood like a dark statue, every small twitch of his fingers sending silent commands. His eyes burned with the cold focus of a man who had killed too many times to care. Lyris, in contrast, didn't move her hands at all. She spoke quietly, in a language Daniel couldn't understand. Her words rolled like soft thunder, and her monster responded with precise, almost graceful movements. It was like watching a war and a dance at the same time. "Make your choice," Kor called over the chaos, his voice carrying through the mist. "You help me, you live." Lyris's gaze flicked toward Daniel for a brief moment. She didn't speak this time, but her eyes said everything. If he left her now, she wouldn't stop her monster from tearing him apart. Daniel's mind spun. If he went with Kor, he might survive the night, but Kor's coldness told him survival would come at a cost. If he stayed with Lyris, he might be dead in minutes, but something deep inside told him she wouldn't betray him if he proved himself. The beasts crashed again, the impact knocking Daniel off his feet. His flashlight flew from his hand and clattered into the shadows. In the dim light, he saw the rival beast's tail whip out, slamming into a broken hull plate, sending shards of metal toward him like knives. He ducked, feeling the sharp wind as they passed over his head. That was when he made his choice. Daniel rolled toward Lyris, grabbing a jagged metal pipe from the ground. Kor's eyes narrowed immediately, his lips curling into a sneer. "Wrong choice, scavenger," he growled. Lyris's voice rose, still in that strange, rhythmic language. Her monster reacted instantly, slamming its massive claw into the rival beast's shoulder, pinning it for a moment. "Move!" Lyris shouted to Daniel. He didn't hesitate, sprinting toward the wreckage near Kor. The mercenary's attention snapped to him, one hand twitching to command his beast. But in that split second of distraction, Lyris's monster tore into the rival's chest again. Daniel didn't stop running until he reached Kor, swinging the pipe at his arm. It wasn't enough to injure the man badly, but it broke his gesture mid-command. The rival beast hesitated, its movements faltering. Lyris seized the chance, shouting a word that made the air hum. Her monster lunged forward, jaws locking around the rival's throat. The sound that followed was brutal, a deep, wet crack, a shudder in the ground. And then silence from the rival beast. Its glowing red eyes dimmed, and its body went limp, collapsing into the mist like a shadow dissolving. Kor stumbled back, rage twisting his scarred face. "You think this ends here?" he hissed. But before he could make another move, Lyris stepped between them, her smile razor-sharp. "Run," she said simply. Kor's jaw clenched, his eyes locked on hers. Then he turned and vanished into the mist, his footsteps fading until there was only silence. Daniel stood panting, the pipe still in his hand. Lyris's monster stepped beside her, its massive shape shimmering faintly in the dark. Daniel could feel its eyes on him, even though he couldn't see them clearly. "You chose," Lyris said, her voice calm now. Why? Daniel hesitated. Because I figured the one who talks instead of kills might be worth trusting, he said. Her smile softened slightly, not warm but no longer cold. Trust is dangerous, she murmured, but sometimes it keeps you alive. They began moving through the wreckage together, Lyris leading and her monster following like a silent shadow. As they walked, she spoke again. You should know something, she said, her voice low. The bond between me and my monster, it is not control. Daniel glanced at her, frowning. What is it then? It is survival, she said simply. If one of us dies, the other dies too. Daniel stopped for a moment, the weight of her words settling in. So when you told me you could kill me with one word? She glanced back at him, her eyes glinting. That word would kill me too, she said, which is why I never said it. The truth hit him harder than the fight had. She hadn't spared him because she needed him. She had spared him because she was risking herself every second. They stood together. They reached a ridge of broken metal that overlooked the valley below. Far in the distance, Daniel saw faint lights moving. Scavenger groups, or maybe more hunters. Lyris's gaze stayed on them for a long moment. Kor will come back, she said quietly. And next time, he won't be alone. Daniel gripped the pipe tighter. Then I'll be ready, he said. Her smile returned, this time with a hint of genuine approval. Good, she murmured, because from now on, you're part of the bond too. And somewhere deep in the mist, something else growled, reminding Daniel that the night's danger was far from over. The trap. The night did not rest. Even after the rival beast's death, the mist around the battlefield seemed alive with whispers. Lyris walked ahead with silent confidence, her monster a shifting shadow at her side. Daniel followed, gripping the bent metal pipe he'd used against Kor. Every sound in the darkness made him tense. Every flicker in the fog made him wonder if another predator was stalking them. They moved through the ruins until the ground sloped downward into a jagged valley. Here, the mist was thicker, the air colder. This place feels wrong, Daniel murmured. Lyris stopped without turning. It is wrong, she said, which is why we move quickly. But just as they stepped between two massive slabs of broken hull, the mist shifted in a way that wasn't natural. A faint humming filled the air. Daniel froze. What is that? He whispered. Lyris's eyes narrowed. A net, she said. A very large one. The hum grew louder, and suddenly, shimmering walls of light snapped into place around them. Daniel spun. Every direction was blocked by a faint blue glow. It wasn't metal or glass, but some kind of energy field. They were trapped. From the fog outside the barrier, heavy boots crunched on the ash. Kor stepped into view, his smirk wider than before. Two more figures followed him, both human, both armed. And behind them, the ground shook under the steps of something massive. The sound was different this time. Slower, heavier. Like a predator with nothing to fear. You didn't think I'd leave without finishing this, did you? Kor said. Daniel's grip on the pipe tightened. Lyris stood still, her expression unreadable. Where did you get the net? She asked coldly. Kor chuckled. Scavenged from the old war, he said. Built to hold things bigger than your pet. Daniel glanced at Lyris's monster. It paced slowly inside the glowing barrier, its movements careful, its eyes locked. On Kor, he noticed something strange. Every time the monster got close to the barrier, it flinched slightly. The field wasn't just a wall, it was painful. Your creature can't touch it, can it? Kor said, grinning. Good, he added, because now I can take my time. One of Kor's men stepped forward, carrying a strange device with sharp, spiked ends. Daniel didn't know what it was, but the way the man held it told him it was dangerous. Lyris's voice dropped low. You brought a tether, she said. Kor's grin widened. Not just a tether, he said. A breaker. Sever the bond and your monster becomes mine. Daniel's stomach twisted. If they broke her bond, not only would she lose her monster, she might die, Lyris. Didn't move, but her voice was like a blade. You won't live long enough to use it, she said. Kor nodded to his men. They moved toward the barrier, the device glowing faintly. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. He looked at Lyris. What do we do? He whispered. Her eyes flicked to him for a fraction of a second. You get ready to run, she said. Daniel shook his head. No, I'm not leaving you. Her expression shifted, just slightly, but she didn't argue. Instead, she began, speaking in that same strange language, faster this time, her tone urgent. Her monster froze, listening intently. Then, without warning, it lunged, not at the barrier but at the ground, slamming its claws deep into the ash. The ground trembled, cracks splitting outward. The barrier shimmered, its light flickering for a moment. Kor's smirk faltered. What are you doing? He barked. Lyris's voice rose, and the monster roared so loudly the air seemed to vibrate. The cracks widened, and a rush of hot air burst upward from beneath the ground. Daniel realized they were standing over a vent, maybe from an old war. Machine buried beneath the ash. The heat warped the barrier's light, weakening its shape. Daniel didn't think. He just moved, grabbing the biggest piece of jagged metal he could find and slamming it into the glowing wall. It sparked violently, sending a shock up his arm. The pain was blinding, but he hit it again. The barrier cracked like glass, and with a final roar from Lyris's monster, it shattered completely. Everything happened at once. The monster lunged for Kor's men, scattering them like leaves. Daniel ran forward, swinging the pipe at the man holding the breaker, knocking it from his hands. Kor cursed and reached for a weapon, but Lyris was already on him, moving with inhuman speed. She pressed a blade to his throat, her smile thin and cold. "You should have run," she said. Kor's jaw tightened. "This isn't over," he spat. "I know," she replied, and shoved him back into the mist, disappearing from his sight. The surviving men fled, the sound of their boots fading quickly. Lyris's monster returned to her side, its massive head lowering as she placed a hand against it. Daniel stood panting, his arm aching from the shock. "You could have told me the plan," he said. She glanced at him. "You would have argued," she said simply. They began moving again, leaving the broken barrier behind. The night was quieter now, but not safe. Daniel knew Kor would return, and next time, the trap might be one they couldn't break. The word. The night had stretched too long. The mist clung to the wreckage like it didn't want to let go. Daniel's muscles ached, his grip on the bent pipe tight enough to make his fingers numb. Beside him, Lyris moved with the same cold grace as always, but he could see it. Her steps were slower, her breaths a little deeper. Even her monster seemed more cautious now, its movements deliberate. They reached the edge of the valley, where the ash turned into a flat stretch of blackened ground. Lyris stopped, her eyes narrowing as she stared into the fog ahead. "He's here," she said quietly. Daniel didn't need to ask who. Kor's voice rolled out of the mist a moment later. "You really think you can keep running?" Shapes emerged. 3, then 5, then more. Kor hadn't come alone this time. Armed scavengers in mismatched armor spread out in a wide arc, weapons raised, and behind them, the ground trembled under the steps of something massive, Daniel's. Stomach twisted. Another beast, even larger than the rival from before, its eyes burning like cold fire. Kor stepped forward, his scarred face lit by the faint glow of the weapons around him. "I learned something from last time," he said. "Don't play games, just end it." He raised his hand, and the massive beast lowered its head, ready to charge. Lyris didn't move. Her smile was gone, her expression unreadable. Daniel felt the tension in the air like a rope pulled too tight. "You can't win," Kor said, his voice low and certain. Lyris tilted her head slightly. "That's where you're wrong," she murmured. Daniel glanced at her. "What's the plan?" he asked under his breath. Her eyes met his for a fraction of a second. "This is where I use it," she said. Daniel's blood ran cold. The word? For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't smile. "Yes," she said, her voice quiet but heavy. "You remember what I told you? It kills me too." Daniel's heart pounded. "Then don't. There has to be another way." "There isn't," she said, cutting him off. "Not if you're to live." The circle of scavengers began to close in. The massive beast stepped forward, its breath steaming in the cold air. Kor smirked. "Any last words?" Lyris's monster stepped between her and the enemy, its massive claws sinking into the ground. The sound it made was not a growl. It was deeper, older, like the earth itself rumbling. Lyris's gaze swept over the enemies in front of her. Then she looked at Daniel. "Stay behind me," she said. He shook his head. "I'm not letting you die for me." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You already chose my side," she said softly. "Now trust me." The scavengers raised their weapons. Kor's beast lunged forward, the ground shaking under its weight, and that was when Lyris spoke. It wasn't a scream or a shout. It was a single word, sharp and clear, spoken in a tongue that didn't sound like it belonged to any living thing. The air shivered, the mist recoiled, and the sound seemed to pierce straight through Daniel's bones. Her monster reacted instantly, every muscle coiling before it exploded into motion. It tore into the enemy beast with a speed Daniel hadn't seen before, its claws and teeth finding every weakness. The scavengers fired, but the shots seemed to slow in the air. Daniel realized it wasn't just the monster moving faster, everything else was moving slower. Kor shouted orders, but his voice was drowned. Out by the sound of the fight, the enemy beast roared, its cry shaking the ground, but it didn't last long. Lyris's monster crushed its throat in one brutal movement, then turned on the scavengers. It moved like living shadow, striking down. Anything in its path, Daniel didn't move. He couldn't. Every part of him told him that this was power no human should witness. When it was over, the battlefield was silent. The mist settled again, and Kor was gone. Vanished into the darkness. Bodies lay scattered, weapons broken. Lyris stood perfectly still, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow, her monster lowered. Its head, pressing it gently against her shoulder, Daniel stepped forward. "You're alive," he said. Her eyes opened slowly. "For now," she murmured, her voice weaker than he'd ever heard it. He caught her as her knees almost gave out. "You said it would kill you." "Not instantly," she said with the faintest hint of a smile. "But the bond is burning out." Daniel's grip tightened. "Then I'll find a way to fix it." Her gaze met his, and for the first time, there was no smile, no mask, just trust. "You have one night," she said quietly. Before the bond fades completely, they stood together in the silent wreckage, the faint light of the broken moon falling over them. Somewhere deep in the mist, a distant growl echoed, not Kor's beast, but something else. Daniel knew the night wasn't over, and the word Lyris had spoken would not be the last.